Good morning. Today I'm very happy to introduce an old friend from England, John Yap, who's been doing many recordings. And I feel you've finally surpassed me in the total number of cast albums, because I had done 124. And I counted in see, I take away the personality. If Rebecca Luker does a whole album, that's not a cast album. That's a you've done in the neighborhood of 140 recordings, and I've done
I think, I think,
124.
I think in terms of cast albums, studio original cast and operatic cast recordings, recordings from opera
Well, if you
productions.
had the opera, well, the opera would make it even higher.
I've
Than
I've done, I think about 200-300 actually.
Okay, well, the opera, you've done a lot of
Yeah,
opera. Anyway, so you grew up in Malaysia, and at what age did you discover music?
about eight or nine.
And what do you remember what it was you heard? And
Well, when I was very young, my mother used to take me to see all these wonderful MGM musicals. And and I grew up on the things like Kismet and The Student Prince and Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. So
so
basically,
she loved them too. She was
hmm,
also eager to see them.
say that again.
She was also a fan. She used to take you.
Oh, she used to love those MGM movies, MGM musicals.
And were there children involved besides you, or were you at that point the only person with her?
I was probably the only person in Malaysia. Well, I mean, obviously the movies were popular, but I probably was the only one who appreciated beyond seeing the movies and appreciating the form of musicals.
But then how did opera and the more serious things come into your life?
Oh, opera came in much later in my life, and my appreciating opera actually became in well actually got me to become involved in musical theaters as a business.
So where are you now? Are you in England when you discover opera?
Yes. You see what happened was that I'm a very avid collector. I'm just a collector. I mean, I collect all sorts of things. You can see behind me those array.
DVDs, you have a huge
And
amount of DVDs,
yeah,
right?
but the thing is that I was a collector of musicals, cast albums, and things like that. Um, then when I started appreciating opera, I started collecting opera recordings as well. And there's a lot more opera recordings than there are cast albums. And so as my opera collection grew, I found that I just couldn't maintain the cast albums and the opera recordings. And so I had to get rid of one. So by my deciding to getting rid of my cast LPs, cast recordings, um, that became my business. If I didn't get involved with opera, if I didn't get interested in opera, then I wouldn't have got rid of my cast albums.
But
Uh,
you
and so
came,
there would be no business. I would have still been a collector.
your original idea was to be a graphic designer, and you were for a brief time. You said you were very happy because the first campaign you did, you were all over on buses and billboards, and
Yeah, what happened was soon after I graduated with a degree. I have a degree in graphic designing, Bachelor of Arts, and I joined a advertising design agency in London in the West End. And the first brief they gave me, strangely enough, as a young employee, was a very important project, a brief which was to provide a new campaign for British Airways. And I came up with a very, very, very simple campaign in that my poster design was basically two stylized reflecting windows, one on the left and one on the right. And basically, and I called it Windows of the World. Uh, and so I have Windows of the World and British Airways, and like if I was advertising London, I would have, I guess, Big Ben and Tower Bridge. And advertising New York, I'll probably have on one window the Statue of Liberty, on the other window Empire State Building, and I just have London, New York, and that was a very simple design and very simple idea. But British Airways bought it, which then there was posters all over the world, obviously, because it was a worldwide campaign. And it was wonderful for me to, when I went to New York or Paris or Rome, I saw those posters. They were all my design.
But what made you leave that and get involved in theater and LPs and things?
Well, the thing is that at that point I was already collecting opera records, and so although I was a rising star of this advertising agency, when I decided to sell my collection at the time, I obviously knew that there was a collector's value to those rare LPs, which I paid money for, when I was collecting. And so instead of just selling them to a second-hand dealer, I put in a couple of small ads in the gramophone and films and filming. And the response from those two little ads was so enormous from all over the world. Other collectors were wanting to buy my rare albums and things like that.
At this point, you knew what people would want.
Yes. Well, the thing is, I was a collector, so I had a lot of rare LPs, rare at the time. Even Clown Around I had, wow. So I found that by answering a few letters every evening after work, and then selling my collection, and then there were times when I was asked, I did ask collectors prices. I did ask £100, £500 at the time for an album. And there were collectors who couldn't afford the money, but they could afford to give me 5 albums plus £100. Would I let them have the rare one? And then I found that because I kept getting letters and things from requests from other collectors from all over the world, I realized if I made a list of what people wanted, who wanted what, I could actually take the 5 albums that someone was offering me and then selling them to people who wanted them,
right.
Other collectors. And so, in fact, instead of selling for example, an album for £500, I took £100 plus 5 albums, and then I would be selling maybe £150 each. Then I would have made £800 by doing that exchange. And so
then at some point you have a little stall near the Drury Lane.
Yeah, well, the thing is, at the beginning, it was a mail order business, but then it started to take off enormously, and so much that I just couldn't do it at home anymore. And then I decided to take in a partner and open a shop. And the first shop was in Drury Lane. And never looked back since.
So how long a period was that from when you made a living to you're starting to produce records?
Well, the shop was an instant success because it was a very special shop. I think at that time it was probably the only one of its kind, in that we not only have a shop, but we had a kind of a social center, because I decided to serve wine and coffee and drinks to our customers, and we have a little area where customers could sit down and talk to each other, talk to us, and discuss about musicals. Can you hold it? Hello? Sorry, I'm very busy. I can't speak to you now. Bye. One of those spam things. Sorry, and so it was really the only kind of that ilk in the world, specializing in musical theater and nostalgia. And then people would come in, not only talking to us, but they talk amongst themselves, So that was
So
a huge.
how many people might you have? What's the most people you would have at one time? 10, 15?
We always had a stream of people. Although our first shop was off the beaten track. It was number 2 Drury Lane. It was actually in the precinct of a hotel. You have to go up some steps to the sort of precinct area, and that's a shop. So, but we always had a constant stream of people. But sometimes there were more, and sometimes there were fewer. But never fewer than one.
Okay.
But we had a lot of. But sometimes we have 5, 6, 10 people.
And what caused you to want to leave that and produce your own cast albums?
What happened then was that when it's time to expand, um, Covent Garden, the Greater London Council team, they were developing the piazza in Covent Garden, the Central Market, which is now world famous. They were developing that market uh, uh, to have 49 units for specialist in interesting shops. And so they invited all kinds of businesses to apply for a unit in that piazza. And we thought, okay, we'll just send in our application. And so we did. There were tens of thousands of applications for those 49 units. And we were one of the few successful ones, one of the 49 successful ones. So we went into Covent Garden from Drury Lane. And then that even became more successful. Um, about a year or two after moving into Covent Garden, again it was time to expand, and I realized that this secret to the success of the shop was not so much selling cast albums, but was also me being there, talking to customers and discussing and sort of exchanging information and things like that about musicals and recordings and what's happening on Broadway and in the West End. So I knew that we couldn't just start another branch because I wouldn't be able to be in 2 branches at the same time. So that's when I decided to start a record label.
What year was that?
It's so long ago. I think it's like 1979.
Okay.
I think it was 79 or 80 perhaps.
So tell us about how did you hit upon the first show you were going to do?
Well, right from the very, very, very beginning when I started the label, I knew that I didn't want to just make recordings of, shows that are hit shows or recordings to make money. I was really more concerned with recording quality, and so the quality and the criteria of its importance in the musical theater that determined what I recorded. And so the very first album that recording that I made, if I said it was Nashville, New York. Nash being Ogden Nash. So it's a review
So this is a show you had seen.
of Ogden Nash's lyrics
You had seen this in a small theater space, correct?
at the King's Head Theatre, but the composers were Kurt Weill and Vernon Duke, and you can't get more quality than Kurt Weill and Vernon Duke. And setting music to Ogden Nash's lyrics. So that was my first recording. It was a live recording from the review that was on at the King's Head Theatre.
Did that do well to start?
Sorry?
Did that do well from the beginning when you put it out?
As it was a new venture, a new label, I just wanted to make sure that we at least didn't lose our shares on that recording. I kept the budget to a level that I knew that we could afford, and I pre-sold that recording with a limited edition of 1,000 units, and we sold out. The pre-order was completely sold out, and so basically we financed the recording before we even recorded it. So that recording is very rare actually at the moment, because I think I only got one copy, but um,
So
that was
what are some of them following ones that you did right after Nashville?
Nashville, New York was the first, and the second album, again, you know, the quality and the criteria and the artistic quality of the show is actually another review, but this time it's a review based on the writing of the poet laureate, one of our poet laureate of the time, Sir John Betjeman. So it's a review called Betjemania. Actually, it starts on Western names like Gay Soper, and but again, with that one, I didn't want to take too much of a gamble. I offered it as a limited edition, and that didn't sell out, but that sold very well. I only got a few copies left, you know. In fact, I don't have any albums left. I've just put it out on the disc on demand for the people who wanted it. But it's still, I haven't sort of commercially advertised it or whatever.
When
People have
when did you get into a West End show?
Sorry.
When did you get into doing a West End show?
Well, that was the next one. Um, I was very flattered and surprised when Harold Fielding, one of basically, I think he's the British answer to David Merrick. He had a show in the West End called The Biograph Girl, and it was written by David Haneke, who wrote Half a Sixpence. It wasn't doing very well, but the fact that it was written by David Haneke was enough reason for me to get involved with that show. So we made our first West End cast, a London cast album of The Biograph Girl, and that actually sold very well.
Was that not considerably more expensive than the first two?
At those During those times, it was expensive, but it wasn't prohibitively expensive, because when you do Western cast albums, you use what you call the equity Western cast recording agreement, and everybody, stars or whatever, whomever, get the same rate, session fee.
You can record over a period of days, unlike America, where it pretty much has to be in one day.
Yeah, we can record over 5 days, 10 days, 20 days, as long as we want, um, as long as we pay them by the session, and each session is 3 hours. So if I had recorded Ginger Rogers in May, I would probably call her in for 2 sessions, and at that time it was £95 a session, and so he would have got £180, £190 for the recording of May, which, you know, that's why it was easy to and affordable to do Western cast recordings during that
It's
time.
good. At this point, did you try to get them in other places like HMV or Tower?
Oh, the Biograph Girl got into everywhere, because it was a legitimate Western cast album of a show that was running in the West End, you know. And the fact that the cast album was being done by a small independent new label actually got me into the front page of the Evening Standard.
Yeah.
The Evening Standard said, you know, just trumpeted that the London cast album of a West End show is being recorded by a small independent label.
So
And I was,
when
I was,
when I did The Baker's Wife,
Huh?
that when I recorded The Baker's Wife, they said, who little guy can record a big Broadway type show? But I did, yeah.
Exactly. So, so the biography was my first West End cast album. And the next one is an interesting one. The next one actually started my idea of recording studio cast coupled with original cast, you know, sort of basically choosing what I want to record. Um, and that was I and Albert. Um, in that I saw I and Albert when it was on in the West End, and although Paramount Records announced the London cast recording, because I and Albert didn't stay long enough, they obviously didn't do the recording. I was always very disappointed because I loved that score. And and so as soon as I was able to organize a recording of it or afford a recording of it, I decided to record it. And I remember getting in touch with Charles Sprouse, who was shocked and thrilled and delighted that, you know, that I wanted to record it.
Did he actually come back to London and participate?
No, he didn't, but he participated. He was very supportive, and you know, and he did contribute a little bit of financing towards it, enough for me to be, you know, to be happy enough to do it. But the thing with the I and Albert is that it's luck as well, because when I decided to do it and started to put a project together, I asked Charles, okay, where are the orchestrations? Because I will only record it with the original orchestrations. And he said, oh, I don't have them. I don't know where they are. And so, you know, this was about 5 or 6 years after Iron Albert had closed. And then nobody knew where the orchestrations were. Um, of course, me being me, I started scout around and ask and driven everybody crazy. And then I found out that when I and Albert shuttered, it was declared bankrupt. It was under administration, and so the entire production, the sets and the scores and everything were just seized and locked up by the administrator. And then I found out that that a Western producer, um, uh, Richard Pilbrow, I believe, it was called Pilbrow Productions. He was involved somehow, and his officers his officers got the keys to the lockup, and I managed to sweet talk his personal assistant to give me the keys to go to the lockup and get the orchestrations. So I went in, and that was wonderful. All these props and everything of I and Albert were in this lockup, and just took the set of orchestrations out, and so we had the orchestrations. That's how we got the original orchestrations to record I and Albert. And of course, when we finished, they weren't keen. They weren't bothered about the orchestration. So I gave them to Charles Strauss, and now Charles Strauss got them. I think. I hope.
How many days do you think that took to record?
Quite a few days, because I had to get Sven Bertil, who was a big Swedish actor, film star in fact. He had to come back, come to London from Sweden to do the recording. And Polly James, and then from the original production, and a couple of other people from the original productions, Louis Farr and a couple of other people. So I've got to get the cast and the chorus and everything together. It took quite a few days, but it doesn't matter. It didn't matter in London, because we could record one session a day, 3 hours, and then leave it for 2 days or 3 days or a week, and then do another session. I would just have to pay them by the session fees.
Did you go into a big studio? Where did you record that?
Uh, we did Iron Albert in at P PRT Studios, Pi Studios. I don't think they're in existence anymore, but PRT they did a lot of cast albums themselves, you know. They did Belmouth and The Match Goes and all the PRT, all the Pi records were done there. It was a nice big studio in Marble Arch.
And were you the sole producer of it, or I know it's early on you had Norman Newell.
Yes, obviously when I started recording, I needed to, because I knew nothing about recording or producing, so I needed to learn from the best. And so I engaged Norman Newell, whom everybody knows that he used to be EMI's chief producer. He's like the British answer to Goddard Liverson, you know. And so I used him and learned a lot from him and his team. So he produced all those earlier recordings.
Well, what was the first one that you took over?
Oh, uh, I think it was a Broadway, it was an off-Broadway show. Um, I have to be very careful. It's so long ago now. I think it was actually Three Guys Naked from the Waist Down. Or was it before that? Um,
How did you start going to America? Did you intend to do American shows, or you didn't think that was likely in the beginning?
well, I mean, obviously, my dream was to do Broadway shows and American shows, but of course, even up to now, I'm the only British company who's ever crossed the Atlantic Ocean from London to New York to record New York shows. Usually the other way around. Usually it's American CBS, American Sony, American BMG, RCA coming to London to record, but never, even EMI never did cross thing and even now, no British company, record companies have crossed over to New York to record Broadway shows. I'm the only one doing it. So, so it was a pipe dream at that time. I would love to do it, but I didn't realize that, of course, I would become an active recording career in New York. And what happened was in 1983, when I um, when I went to when I went to New York for that week, I I booked to see all the big shows um, in New York because you know I pre-booked and rearranged
And then you
to
also went to see opera, I'm guessing.
at that time not yet
No.
not as ardent but I booked all the big shows because I looked at the reviews, but there was one show that I didn't book to see, which was On Your Toes. And because I read Frank Rich, I think it was Frank Rich, um, the New York Times review of it, and it was absolutely scathing. It was really bad. So I decided, oh, I'm not going to see On Your Toes. It's an old show, 1930s shows. I see all the big new Broadway shows, and you know. So when I went to New York, at that time I was working with the Rogerson Hammerstein office on another project. Um, and when I got to New York, my friend whom I usually at that time I would always call and socialize with Ted Chapin. And when I called Ted Chapin, he said, "Are you staying on your toes?" I said, "No." I said, I haven't booked to stay on your toes." And then he said, "Oh no, you're going to stay on your toes tomorrow night. I'm going to arrange 2 tickets for you." So he did. And so I went to see On Your Toes. And of course, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. And I loved the orchestrations, the original Hans Bialik orchestrations. And so the next morning, I rang Ted and said, thank him for the tickets and everything. And I asked him, why wasn't on the, I said, why wasn't there a cast album? It's been running for a few months now. Then Ted said, oh, nobody wanted to record it. And I said, without thinking or knowing how I'm going to finance it, I said, I'll record it. And they said, okay. And of course, I think at that point we started the new way of financing cast recordings. Um, in which I mean, I knew I couldn't afford myself to pay for $200,000 to record on the toes. And so I discussed with Ted, and together we formed a kind of a situation where the Kennedy Center contributed a bit, the New York producers contributed a bit, the publishers contributed a bit, Rogers and Hammerstein contributed a bit, and I contributed a bit. And so we together financed that recording. But it was very important to me, even from the very beginning, that my involvement with it would mean that I own the masters. I must always own the masters of any projects that I record. And that was agreed. That was fair enough. I said, because I don't benefit from the recording, I'm accepting for my being able to sell it, you know. But if this recording is a success, the owners of the work, Rogers and Harts, and the producers should be able to to have foreign productions in London and everywhere else. This recording will help sell it. They will enjoy the benefits of the recording. My only benefit is the recording. I don't benefit from the success of subsequent productions, the touring productions and things like that. So that's why it's important for me to at least enjoy the fruits of my involvement. So they saw that reasoning, and they were fair, and they thought it was fair. And so yeah, so from that point onwards, I own all the recordings I recorded, even though most of them, or quite a lot of them, were co-financed. And I think that started the template for the recording of Broadway cast albums and off-Broadway cast albums till now, I think. So that was my first American recordings, and I never looked back.
You'd have to be a millionaire to absorb the losses if you've recorded everything that you thought should be recorded. But on Your Toes, you recorded pretty much all the music. They came out with a 2 LP set, right?
Yes. Yes, and of course, when I recorded, when I started recording Broadway cast albums, I knew that I couldn't handle the American distribution, and that's where the major sales of these recordings would be. And so I entered into a very close and long-term arrangement with Polygram Records, part of the Polydor Records, part of the Polygram group, and made some really great friends in the Polygram group in New York. The managing director became a really good friend and supporter, and his immediate people around him. So Polydor released that, but of course Polydor, like all the major labels, do not see double albums as a viable commercial prospect. So they only wanted a single LP. So I have to edit down songs like Quiet Night and Slaughter on 10th Avenue and other songs. So the Polydor release of On Your Toes have cut some of the songs were cut, were shortened. But the one that came out on PER on 2 albums, that was a complete, you know.
So that in the UK, you came out with the 2 record set.
Yes. So but then it was released in America on Polydor.
And then what other New York shows did you do?
Well, because I was able to pull On Your Toes together, I guess I was being talked off and everything else. And one day, soon after, I received a phone call from Tommy Orlando. I'm sure you know who Tommy Orlando was.
Sure.
Yeah, one of the big guns, big music publishers. I think at the time he published Sondheim and Camden Head and Motley and Shah and a whole lot of other Broadway writers. I had the phone call from Tommy Orlando, and he said to me, John, he says, you want to record the ring with Liza Minnelli and Chita Rivera? I said, do I want to record the ring? Of course I want to record the ring. Well, come over then. So I went over, did the deal, did the financing again. And of course, at that time, if I didn't do the ring, no one else would have done it. I mean, the major companies were all desperate to do the ring. BMG and Sony and others, they were all desperate to do it. But they couldn't do it because the agreement that Liza and Cheetah had with the management was so prohibitive for a cast album to be made that no major cast album could afford to do it. In that, it wasn't so much paying them a lot of money. It's the deal. It's the royalty. They wanted $1 each from record one. Liza gets $1, Cheetah gets $1, and that was impossible. As you well know, that at the time, the actually net profit of any albums would probably be about $3, $3.50.
Right.
After you've taken all the expenses and everything else, and of course they may be selling for $15, but you only get $7 because you sell them to distributors, to wholesalers. And so no record company, no major record companies could afford to do it, and they couldn't negotiate with Liza or Cheetah because that was the stipulation in the agreement with the producers of the ring. Nobody can talk to Liza and Cheetah on business. They can only talk to Liza and Cheetah on artistic matters. All business got to be dealt through the lawyers and their agents. So I guess when I went to New York, that's a little old me in a little independent company, and my voice I wanted to record. I got from a little bird told me that Liza was desperate to record the cast album. Whether or not one talked to her, but we knew that she really, really, really wanted to record the cast album. And so the first port of call I had to make was a telephone call to Sam Cohen. You know who Sam Cohen was?
Agent.
He was one of the most powerful Hollywood agents,
Yes.
In the world.
Yeah, when I did a record with Melissa Errico, she said, "Oh, talk to my agent." I said, "Sam Cohen doesn't know who Bruce Echo is."
Well, the thing is that the first call I had to make was to Sam Cohen, because if we didn't get Liza, there's no point. And so I called Sam Cohen, and the first thing he said was, "I didn't want her to be in the show in the first place. Why do you think I want her to be in the album?" And then I knew that Liza was desperate to do it. I said to him, "Well, I guess you just have to ask your client whether he wants to be on the album." And then he said, "Well, I'll call you back." And then at that point, I did call John Kander and Fred Ebb and told them, "Oh, I think it's a long shot. I'm not sure if they're going to get the album, And I was shocked. 2 days later, I had a phone call from Sam Cohen, and he said, "Well, Liza wants to do it." Okay, so that's the first hurdle. All right. Then the second hurdle was the $1 royalty, $1 each. And I said to this time I was dealing with the New York agent. And I said, "Look, I'm a small record company, and that's why I'm able to do it, because RCA or CBS cannot say that. I can. I'm a small record company, I have limited funds. I can't afford it. If this album is going to be made, we have to revisit all the figures." And so I made an offer of 10 cents, royalty of 10 cents after recoupment. So I reduced from the $1 from payable from record one to 10 cents after recoupment. And that was accepted. simply because I was a small independent company. And that's the truth. That's absolutely the truth. I couldn't afford it. And so I say, without me or without a small record independent company who had the gumption to tell Sam Cohn to ask his client rather than to say, oh, well, you know, sorry, but the ring would never have been recorded. So, and of course we did that recording.
What about Baby?
Well, Baby was handled by Tommy Valando, of course. Uh, and, uh, and so after the ring, Tommy gave me another phone call and said, look, why don't you come over and do Baby as well? And so I said, okay. Because again, now Baby, actually, I think Baby had a bit of a problem trying to be placed with a major label because I didn't think it was as successful as they hoped it to be, which is a shame because Baby is a wonderful, is still a wonderful a show with a wonderful score, and this, and I love the story. I loved everything about Baby. So yeah, Baby was made because of the rink, really, because Tommy Valendo was very impressed by what I did with the rink and how I did it with the rink, and so he got for me to go back to Baby.
Okay, skipping ahead quite a few years, tell me about I Remember Mama, because I was involved early on. I'd like to hear your involvement.
Well, I Remember Mama was an interesting thing in that by now I got very involved with the American scene, and and I, being a lover of the musical theater and appreciative of all the writers and creativity and other people involved, I always felt that it was such a terrible shame that Richard Rodgers, the father of Broadway musicals, really, his final work is just left to be forgotten. I mean, the major record companies, you know, who've made all these wonderful millions from him, the soundtrack of The Sound of Music is enough to pay for 10,000, I Remember Mamas, you know, weren't interested. So by then I was working quite closely with the Rodgers and Hammerstein organization, and I said to Ted, you know, I want to do, let's do I Remember Mama. Let's at least preserve Richard Rodgers' final score for posterity. And so that's how I Remember Mama happened.
So you wound up recording all the music in London?
Well, we recorded it was always going to be recorded in London, and and the original casting, I did have Liv Ullmann. I had the I had the audacity to call her in Sweden when she was filming in a television studio. She actually came to the phone, and I spoke to her, and I said, you know, would love you to record. I Remember, and then she actually said, oh yes, okay, I'll do. I Remember, Mama. I'll come to London, and so that was my terrible attempt at trying to speak Swedish with a Swedish accent. And so wow, we have Liv Ullmann, you know, and then she said, well, talk to my British agent and to arrange everything. And then of course, by the time I got to the British agent, she changed her mind. Huh. So that was a great shame. I wonder what made her change her mind. I never knew to today. But when I spoke to her on the phone, she was very keen. And so we had to cast around, and we then decided, when I say we, Rodgers and Hammerstein and we decided to cast with links to Richard Rodgers. And so we thought, okay, Mary Martin. Okay, so I got in touch with Mary Martin, and she accepted, you know. She accepted. No, she didn't accept. I'm sorry. We got in touch with Mary Martin. She turned us down because I think her manager husband thought that was a bad idea. So she turned us down, and then we thought, Okay, I guess we have to, by now we're putting all the recording and everything together, because when Leave Oman was supposed to be doing it, we were going to do everything in London. You see, she was going to come to London. So everything was booked and everything else. So we thought, well, we'll go for the next Rogers um, link, which was Shirley Jones. And I got in touch with Shirley Jones, and she was very keen. She said, "Oh, I'd love to do it," and everything else. And she was going to fly to London and to record here. Uh, when Shirley Jones accepted, Mary Martin came back and said, "Oh, you know, John, love to do Mama." Um, and then at which point I said to her, I said, "Look, we offered it to Shirley Jones," and Shirley Jones said, "Accepted." And Mary Martin then said, very graciously said, "Okay, well, she's perfect. She's perfect for the role, you know." And so she pulled out. And as soon as I turned Mary Martin down, Shirley Jones turned it down. So,
Did you give a reason?
nope, she just decided she didn't want to come to London, I guess. And so, but then we were really sort of
You need a mama badly.
hmm?
You need a mama badly.
Yeah, we needed a mama badly, and we felt we just couldn't go back to Mary Martin after turning her down. So I then had no choice but to get someone whom I think did a wonderful job. I think, with hindsight, she was almost a perfect mama. Who was in London, who lived in England, you know, and so we had Sally Ann House to come in to do Mama, and we did. Then we did the tracks in London, and we did a lot of the recording, the chorus, and we had Patricia Routledge and Sean Phillips and Elizabeth Seald and all these big British names in it. But the American names like Josh Hearn and Josh S. Irving and Anne Morrison, whom I cast as their daughter, we have to go to New York to record them. Um, but it was mostly done in London, yes.
So how did this do financially?
Hmm?
How did this record do financially?
Uh, it's okay. It's okay. I don't think it recouped, but again, you see, the thing is, when I decide to do a recording, it's not for the money. I knew that we would never recoup on I Remember Mama. It was something that I wanted to do to put something right, to have the last score of Richard Rogers preserved for posterity, you know, because all his other scores were recorded since Hammerstein.
Some heart that are lost, unfortunately.
Mm?
The hammer, some of the heart, Peggy Ann, I think.
Yes.
The songs are thrown out the way the orchestrations were almost lost on Ian Albert.
Yes.
So tell about you were fortunate enough to get a lot of money from a newspaper that took many of your recordings, and that enabled you to do things that you couldn't have otherwise afforded, correct?
Of course. I mean, well, it wasn't a newspaper. It was actually a publisher, magazine publisher. Well, a very big international magazine publisher. And at that time, it was very fashionable to have what you call part works, where you release a magazine with a free CD uh, over a period of a couple of years, by once every once every 2 weeks, bi-monthly publication where you buy the magazine, but you have a free CD, and then you have a subscription for the whole series. And they were very successful with their pop series, the opera series, the classical collection, the opera collection, the Elvis collection. You know, they had theme collection, the 50s collection, the 70s collection, the guitar collection. You know, so they wanted to do the musical collection. But something which I've learned from day one was when you do recordings, cast albums, and things like that, you have to make sure that you get uh, unencumbered agreements. I know by looking at a lot of, not so much looking, but by researching and finding out, a lot of the Broadway cast albums, even now, I think, are very restrictive, London cast Broadway, because I guess the record companies didn't care. They just signed an agreement. They can't, for example, you can't sell below
They give away the movie rights, and they really control everything.
Rights, and then having to get rights from the cast, and having to get rights from the writers, get rights from the, and then you can't sell below a certain price. You can't license it out to people. It got to always be released by CBS or RCA or whatever. But when I did my agreements, I made sure that none of these restrictions applied. That I was, because again, I think I got my way, because I'm a small independent label and I needed to have the freedom to make as much money and to sell as much as I can, because I don't have the resources to just only sell it through my label, and so all my agreements are unencumbered. I got total freedom to exploit the recordings in whatever way I need. I'm telling this because any other record labels, if they can have the ability to get those sort of agreements, good luck with them. But
so some of these you have already recorded, but then in other cases you went in and did new recordings.
Well, the thing is that the reason why this international magazine publisher came to me was that they realized to their horror that they couldn't get any of these rights from the major labels. Of course, they would prefer to have the original London cast, original Broadway cast as part of their free CDs, but they couldn't get any of them. They couldn't get the big names, like they couldn't get West Side Story, they couldn't get the Phantom of the Opera, they couldn't get Oklahoma, they couldn't get the King and I, because all these recordings are tied down by the underlying agreement, by the main agreement, by the labels. And so they had to come to me, and because I knew that if they wanted to do the series, I was the only source that would be able to supply to them what they needed. Because I know that all the other independent labels, like First Night, they only have one or two major titles, and the rest were just, think whatever they came under the West End, or DRG or whatever. No, none of these labels have as wide and as varied and as thorough a catalog as mine. So even with my catalog, I told them I have to generate new recordings and make new to fulfill their list of the great musicals, Although I have a lot already, I needed to make new recordings just to give them what they needed, and so I did a deal whereby I provided 12 tracks to them. I didn't want to give them the whole album. I just give you 12 of the main songs, and I will for those new recordings I needed to be made. I will make them with the original orchestrations and with stars from Broadway, West End, theater, movie, opera, whatever. So I did that deal, and then of course I got quite a lot of advance money from them, and then I realized that if I have to negotiate with say West Side Story, with the publishers and the owners, with Bernstein and Sondheim's agents and everybody, to use the original orchestrations. Basically, it's with Bernstein with it. I think Bernstein controlled it mostly. I might as well negotiate to record the entire score, the complete score, because it will be the same negotiation, because I'll be talking to the same person using the original orchestrations, whether it be to record 12 songs or to record the entire score. So I decided to do the entire score. So all the negotiations for the classics, I negotiated to record the entire score. And the same thing with the stars. If I'm going to engage a Broadway star or a Western star, I might as well engage them to record the whole show, the role, rather than 3 songs, because it's the same negotiation. I just have to pay them a bit more. Um, so I decided to invest. I did get millions out of that deal. To invest the millions back into making complete recordings instead of keeping the money. I should be very, very, very cash rich now if I just did 12 songs rather than doing the whole show. But I think with hindsight, having the whole show, having a catalog of all these complete recordings is invaluable. It gave me a very good life. It gave me a very, very uh, um, uh, luxurious life, and I could do what I wanted to do, and I could afford to make recordings I really like, I really want to do. Because these complete
And
recordings are,
it's also important. These are well-known shows that are constantly done, that people in high schools and colleges hear everything. It's a great
yeah.
teaching.
Well, the thing is that it's all very well having new Broadway cast recordings of all the shows, and when they're reorchestrated, when they're cut, when they're changed. But when stock and amateur, when they want to do one of these shows, they have to go back to the original because that's what is available. And for all these people wanting to do all these classics, it's stock and amateur. The musical director listening to the complete recordings will find it invaluable
But
because you'll be hearing the entire score as published. You open the first page of your piano vocal score or your full conductor score, it's there, and every note is recorded for you. For choreographers who have been engaged to choreograph for the whole show, they only have to listen to my complete recordings, the routine, their choreography. They don't have to resort to piano playing from the score. They can just listen to my complete recording of the complete dance in the original orchestrations without any cuts.
so
So
how
the
many different albums have you done?
valuable.
How many complete show albums have you done?
Well, we recently did a campaign of selling our complete recordings, and I think we have over 70 complete recordings, British and American shows.
Okay, because you have a very big recording that took 26 years, but finally we're getting Anyone Can Whistle in its entirety.
Yeah,
Tell us
yeah.
about the beginning of that. What happened prior to 1994 that led you to say, I'm going to record the complete show?
Well, I mean, like I remember Mama and all the other shows that I decided to record. I always thought that Anyone Can Whistle never really. I didn't really know it. You see, I only know it from the original cast. But even the original cast did excite me a lot. And then I did look at the score and look at the script, and I knew that there were a lot of bits missing. You know, and that we weren't really given the complete of American so with the original cast before. And very few people saw the original production because it went for 9 performances. And so it's always been a personal ambition to record Anyone Can Whistle complete. Um, and and so when I was in a position to do it, having worked with Sondheim and Arthur Lawrence uh, over several other projects, I became sort of friends with them, um, and um, and so I felt that I could actually because I wasn't just going to go into negotiating with the agents and the lawyers about this because I thought that if I did that, I probably wouldn't get anywhere. So I just called Steve and Arthur and told them I wanted to record and I wanted to do a complete recording. And wow, the both were immediately supportive and been steadfastly supportive all these years. And that's how Anyone Can Whistle, the first complete recording was planted. because I personally just wanted to make sure that wanted to listen to the whole score. I wanted to listen to the whole score, you know, in the original orchestrations, in the original version.
So did you originally do all the music?
Oh yes, yes, it was. It was.
I mean, in 1994, was all the music laid down?
Yes, Anyone Can Whistle was completely recorded in 1994. 1997, I think. What's 1994? I can't remember.
1994. I read this.
Well, whenever it was. Uh, uh, and no, it was all recorded, excepting for a few bits and pieces to be finished, vocal actors, because at the time when I recorded, some actors didn't complete. One actor didn't complete his thing because he wasn't well and he couldn't come in the studio. But everything else was done and paid for and locked up in the or finished in the cans. And and uh, I I remember asking Steve Sondheim to play the part of the narrator. And Steve said, look, you know, John, I don't think I should be doing it. You should ask Arthur. And so I asked Arthur Lawrence, and of course, Arthur Lawrence said, yes, okay, of course, I'd love to do it. And so when Arthur came to London, I think that time he came to London for another show. It was another show that of his, not a Sondheim show, but it was another show. Maybe West Side Story, I think. And he's when I'm in London, you know, doing being involved with that production. I'll come into the studio and record the narrator. And so he did. But Anyone Can Whistle, with hindsight, it was perfect. For some strange reason, it just because it was just caught up. Actually, I was caught up because I did such a lot of complete recordings. Like at that time, One Touch of Venus, The Dancing Years, Anyone Can Whistle, and all the others. And then there are all this like The Music Man, Fiddle on the Roof, Brigadoon, Hair, 42nd Street. They're all still in the cans, you know, waiting for me to get to them to release the complete recording. And then I was doing things like Peter Pan and all this, and there were all these current recordings. I was recording 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 shows, cast albums a year. So my time was just taken up with all this current recording, that all these complete recordings that I have done, but paid for and fully financed. I just didn't have time to get to them. And so Anyone Can Whistle was caught up amongst them, and that's why it's taken all this time. All this speculation about me having no money and this and that were all rubbish. You know, it was time. I just didn't have the time to like there are all these about 8 or 9 complete recordings waiting for me to get to them to finish.
So because of the virus, this gave you time because of the virus?
Exactly, it was a lockdown that gave me that released the time for me to finish Anyone Can Whistle and other things. I finished a couple of other recordings, and started with my DJ mix. So basically, it's time, and by sheer coincidence, the lockdown came, and I had all this time, and so I decided to finish Anyone Can Whistle. And as it turned out, it's actually a blessing in disguise that we didn't release it all these years before, because the combination, the unprecedented tsunami of social and political upheaval that America is experiencing at the moment. That's exactly the plot of Anyone Can Whistle. So releasing it this year, 2020, is so timely and relevant to what's happening. I mean, suddenly Anyone Can Whistle is no longer a 60s musical. It's very much a contemporary, politically and socially relevant musical, you know? And this is not a new recording of a 60s show. It's a new recording of a show that is very much now, because all the words and all the lyrics, all the situations in Anyone Can Whistle is so uncannily and eerily parallel and reflect, and it's the same similar to what is happening now. I mean, Cora could easily be Trump. I mean, the words that come out of Cora's mouth, you know, lock them up, you know, put them in a cage, women and children first. The theaters are dark, you know. Any man who can invent a miracle can invent anything, can do anything. And so who says it's going to be like a miracle, it will disappear? It's like, you know, so, and politicizing religion, dividing people, it's all there and anyone can do so. So basically the delay is almost like a blessing in disguise. Like it almost like fate was telling me, don't release it, wait till 2020. Then when you release it, it becomes very much an important release of a new release of a show that is so much rooted now.
At this point, you're taking advanced orders at the J website, and
yes, we the advanced order started, and I have to say it's been enormously amazing. I knew that it was after 24 years or whatever of making people wait for this, I guess. Suddenly, everybody's been waiting 24 years, been rushed to put in their orders, you know. And of course, we got the most wonderful, totally amazing endorsement from Steve. Steve heard it, he absolutely loved it. He thinks it's wonderful. And he said, I must quote this correctly. I don't want to misquote him. He gave us the most wonderful endorsement, and he volunteered. What was it now? He said, the brilliance of this recording gives the show more energy and sparkle than it's ever had. It made me proud of it. I mean, can you ask for a better endorsement than that?
no, that's great. That's great.
You know. So yes, we have a great future with this release. Yeah.
Okay, one other question again, more for a personal reason than tell me about your recording of The Baker's Wife, because that's the recording, the show that made my whole catalog interesting. How did you get involved in recording?
The Baker's Wife, the London cast, just happened because it was there, it was available, and it was a London cast. By then, I could pick my recordings, and I decided to record The Baker's Wife because I happen to like the score a lot.
But there was a lot of, if Stephen Schwartz told me, he said that I'm going to save you money, me meaning me, because we don't need all the chorus, we don't need the townspeople. We just cut it down to the basic Baker and his wife and the chauffeur. But for London, there was an awful lot of music. And
yeah.
The thing that I love particularly, though, you know, of course I prefer my recording and Patti LuPone, but the dialogue at the end when she comes back, you hear that dialogue makes me cry.
Yes. Did you record that dialogue?
Well, just a little, you know, the one thing I said, I seldom have any you've had great influence on what is or isn't on recordings. I've had almost nothing. But I did say early on, I said, I want her to be asked to help, you know, light the oven when they first come to town. And she's, I'm too tired. And then at the end, she says, I'll light the oven. So there's a lot more to it than that. But that, just those words, I'll light the oven, makes me cry.
Yes. Yeah, but no, I'm sorry, I didn't get it. You did record that dialogue, didn't you?
No, not that scene. Just that. In the beginning, she's not interested in helping him. And at the end, of course, with all the dialogue, you know that what she says is that she will never leave.
Yeah.
There she appreciates what she found in the baker is true love. What she found with the chauffeur
I'm saying that is that dialogue in your recording?
Not all the dialogue, no, just
Just a bit. You
just
have
a
a few
bit.
lines.
Right. So you need to get my recording, then buy your recording to hear all the dialogue and the additional songs.
Okay, I should do that at some point. No, I decided when I did the Baker's Wife. I mean, you know me. I love to record the whole show. I would have recorded the whole show, but we recorded practically the whole, not the whole show, but a lot of the show. You know. So I'm glad we recorded that final scene because that's so moving.
But they keep changing things, though. I mean, the thing that I like initially, the first Baker's Wife, she had never known love.
Yeah.
And now they just throw it, oh yeah, she had boyfriends, and that ruins it. That she's infatuated with the chauffeur because she's never felt
Yeah.
passion.
Yeah.
I think that's, if I was to be involved, I would say, no, she's not known love. She's and she learns, that what she gets from the chauffeur is not true love, but
Yeah.
what the baker has
Yeah.
always be there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was good. The thing is that uh, one thing which I regretted not recording the dialogue is the little bit of the little scene before sending the clowns for my recording of a Little Night Music, because that little exchange of dialogue between her and Frederick sets the whole reason for the song. You
And has
know,
that never been recorded on
never
any album?
no, but I mean, of course, the television productions
Over
and
the whole show, but on an
where
album, they haven't realized that little bit is so important.
if that little scene is attached to that song becomes meaningful and the real meaning of the song, But I would, if I did it now, I would have definitely recorded that little scene. It's just about 3 lines or 4 lines of dialogue.
Hmm.
But most people were just so keen to make that song into one song, a hit song.
Uh, so do you have any other words of wisdom to impart to the collecting audience?
Well, I think do it because you love it. Don't do it because you think you're going to make money out of it. Because look, when I recorded the Most Happy Fella, it cost me £800,000, almost $1 million. Did I think I was going to make $1 million back? No. I won't even make $100,000 back. I don't think. But I wanted to do it, and I'm thrilled. Nothing has pleased me more than the fact that I recorded the Most Happy Fella, just like Anyone Can Whistle and One Touch of Venus and things like that. Um, so that's my advice. Just do what you want to do and what you love and what your heart tells you to do, because the rewards will come in different ways. The rewards not necessarily. I mean, for me, actually, strangely enough, I did collectively. I am having a very good living, um, and I could do what I want to do, and I'm not rich, but I'm well off. But because of what I've done, it's paying me back in little ways here, and collectively, it's kept me in a very nice lifestyle.
What do you see happening to J Records down the line?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, at the moment, I'm quite happy for it to just carry on because I'm having so much fun.
Are you not concerned that it stay together and not be sold off piecemeal, that someone will buy?
You, I would rather just, because if I died, I die, and it and and because I haven't sold it off to anybody, whomever inherits it will just keep it together. It's a catalog that is so unique and so important and so unique is the word really, and it's very important because it does cover the entire history of operetta and American British musicals, you know. Because I don't know if your audience know that I do have operettas like the Merry Widow and the Count of Luxembourg and Orpheus and all the Gilbert and Sullivan, you know, all this and early American operettas like the Student Prince and you know the sort of things. It's all covered, the whole spectrum.
Are some of these more complete than the usual recording?
Yeah, most of them are the complete scores. I mean, the Gilbert and Sullivan are all complete. Like not with the dialogue, but only one with HMS Pinafore is the only one that has all the dialogue in it. So, you know.
Okay. It's been a treat to hear all of this, and I look forward to getting some copies of Anyone Can Whistle. I certainly heard things in the orchestrations of the things you previewed. Can anyone go to the J site and hear a couple previews, or where does one go to sample?
Well, they can join, they can like J Records Facebook. Okay, they like it there, and then they'll get access to J Records, and it's all archived, and it's there. But I mean, just to get a flavor. But basically, there is a lot more in Anyone Can Whistle than people think. I mean, have you seen the cover of Anyone Can Whistle? A lot of people are quite puzzled by the image. Let me see if I can get the image up and show you. A lot of people are puzzled by the image.
Did Billy Rosenfeld design this? Am I correct?
Yes, happened to win the competition.
Tell where people don't know, Billy Rosenfeld was a major producer at RCA, and he is retired. And
I know.
So you didn't pick it because you knew him as a record producer?
No. I picked it because the image was right.
Okay.
You see that? Can you see the image?
Yes, that's clear.
Okay.
Yes.
And a lot of people are puzzled by that. Now, that is the lady from Lords. Okay. There is a track on the album called The Lady from Lords. Okay.
Right.
And that cover design is in two parts. A juxtaposition of a 1960s style, 1960s type poster, The Lady from Lords, and that's because 1964 was when it was on Broadway, and the wall that is on is what you call edged pop. You know what I mean by edged pop?
I know the phrase, yes.
Well, they are sort of political posters, political designs, you know, very stark and look up edged pop. And all the images are the cookies and the townspeople and the disenfranchised people of the town, the poor and the unemployed, and you know, okay. So that is 2020.
Great.
So the poster is pasted on, juxtaposed onto 2020. So the 1960s poster is on the 2020 wall, which is the original Broadway show was in 1964, and the complete recording is 2020. All right, politically. So that's the idea. But a lot of people are mystified or puzzled by that lady, the French lady. That's because you don't get the idea, or you don't even know that for most of Act 2 and a lot of Act 3, Faye goes into a French disguise as a French lady. So Faye appears in a red wig and she speaks, you know, as pretending to be a French lady infiltrating into the whole miracle water thing. So that character is totally oblivious. People wouldn't know that character exists if they only listen to the original Broadway cast recording, or indeed to the concert cast recording, because a lot of the dialogue and a lot of songs that should be sung with a French accent just were done. So that's the French lady. That's Faye disguised as a French lady, and I wanted that image because it was striking. And I didn't want to have the usual cookies and crumbled cookies and that sort of cliched, obvious idea, you know, of cookies being eaten and cookies being taught, or cookies, because anyone can do so is more than cookies. Anyone can do so is more political and more about faith. Uh, and as it happened, half the musical Faye was in a French disguise, speaking with called heavy French. You wouldn't you wouldn't go into a disguise and speak like an American to try to convince people. You know, I mean, unfortunately, the recording had a very slight hint of speaking the French word, but never obvious that it was supposedly to be in "Come Play With Me." If you listen to both recordings, it wasn't obvious that Faye was actually in a heavy French disguise. And if you were in French disguise, if you were a Texan in the French disguise, you wouldn't try to convince people by speaking in a Texan with a little bit of French. You try to put on really exaggerated French design to become, you know, to
Right.
throw people off the scent that you're really a Texan. You understand what I mean?
Yes, yes.
So that's the French lady from Lords, the poster.
Okay. Well, again, thank you very much. I will be in touch with you, and maybe we can do a follow-up, because, you know, you've done lots of recordings. I'm sure we could do another program just on the recordings we haven't talked about.
Okay, sorry, it's taken hours. It's too long, I think.
No, no, no. You,
Okay, lovely talking to you, and
okay,
and thanks very much for inviting me to your program.
good. Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I can't leave.